So, my favourite game is Minecraft, which is, pretty basic choice, I know, but it's a really good game. But what's even more basic is I pretty much always exclusively play it vanilla. However, there is one mod that I swear by, and that is the Minecraft Origins mod. For those unfamiliar, Minecraft Origins allows you to play as these sort of various mob hybrids with different buffs and debuffs, depending on what mob the origin is based on. In the standard version, there's 9 origins to pick from. All are pretty unique and allow for super diverse and fun playstyles. But enough glazing. I've decided to create my own character designs for each of the origins. Since 9 is a lot for one video, I'm splitting this into 2 parts for my own sanity. For this part, we're going to be drawing up the enderion, the merling, the phantom, and the elytrian. Starting off with the enderion, I wanted them to look all lanky and ethereal, but also kind of shy and awkward looking since the origin is based off endermen. This is the kind of fella who everyone thinks is super mysterious, but they're actually just autistic. I mean, whole eye contact thing. As an autistic guy myself, endermen are highly relatable. I too will unhinge my jaw if someone moves their crosshair over my eyeballs. I wanted to give them some little wizardy type trinkets that are like end artifacts, I guess. So we have Eyes of Ender on their hood, a sort of end pearl chain, and end rods on their hip. At one point, I did actually want to give them an end rod as a sort of dangling earring, but obviously the hood would be covering that up. We can just say that they have one underneath. I also gave them these poofy pants. Not entirely sure why, but it gave them a pretty cool silhouette, and feet are just weird hoof stump things, because endermen have freaky stick legs. Now, at first, I was having a rough time with the colouring, so I ended up making a little colour palette in the corner, which was immensely helpful. I was a bit worried about there not being much contrast between the skin and clothes, so I added sort of like glow to parts of the skin. I don't know if that fixed the contrast issues, but I think it does make them look pretty ethereal. And then, of course, there's the shading. And also, I added some particle effects around the rods and the pearl that they're about to throw across a giant canyon or something. And it looks like they're pretty much done, so... Next up, we have the merling, and I struggled a lot with this one because for some reason I decided to make things harder for myself. So the icon that goes with the merling origin is a codfish, and I decided that to be as accurate as possible, I should reference a cod while drawing this guy. Luckily, it turned out alright. Oh, by the way, I do fix his face in a bit. I know right now he looks like he sniffs glue. I wanted this dude to have a fairly dynamic pose, like he was playing in the water, because this origin can and will die if he decides to go walkies. Being a merling involves a lot of problem solving, but it makes mining a whole lot more interesting. And since he's pretty much fully aquatic, I gave him lots of upper body strength for lots of swimming. He doesn't have much strength in his little legs though, because I imagine he's mostly using his tail for propulsion. So he's a little top heavy, but I think it works. I've given him some trinkets. He's got some Heart of the Sea bracelets, a small nautilus shell necklace, a seaweed miniskirt, and literal fishnets. Again, I struggled with this one a bunch. Figuring out how I wanted the fins to look was a pain, but I'm happy with the way they turned out. Also, want to note that I gave him that weird little antenna thing that cods have on their chin. It kind of looks like a goatee, and I think that's fun. I feel like this guy probably listens to the Grateful Dead and maybe a bit of Pink Floyd. He's also got some big old gills to breathe his big breaths with. Going into the colours, I was pretty worried because codfish aren't exactly the most eye-catching. But honestly, I think I judged cod too harshly. Yeah, their palette's a bit simple, but I think they're actually quite pretty. They have lots of speckles on them and this elegant sort of shimmering wavy line that goes down their sides. And then using all these murky browns meant that I could add some neat little pops of colour, like the pinks on the shell and fleshy bits, and also the teal on the bracelets, which I think helped distinguish the hands a bit. Shading was kind of a nightmare though, because I wanted him to look like he's underwater. And underwater lighting is very soft because there's also bounce light and ambient light. Problem is that I'm doing cell shading for these lot, and cell shading isn't very soft looking. So what I did was I shaded with a deep cyan to get that underwater lighting look, and then I made a kind of gradient by drawing in scales, and I'm pretty chuffed with the result. Now for the Phantom, who I ended up sketching out twice. Technically I didn't finish the first sketch of her though, but the reason why I'm keeping it in here is because I actually use it as a reference for the final sketch. Also, I'm super sorry if you can hear my fans in the background. It is just too hot right now and I need to get recording done, so sorry about that. Phantoms are kind of seen as a bit of a nuisance. They pretty much just pester you to go to bed by biting chunks out of you. In a way, they're kinda like Minecraft's version of a tiredness mechanic, and since this origin has to avoid sunlight, and it's only fully allowed out at night, I think it's pretty fitting to have her be very sleepy. On top of being a chronic insomniac, I wanted to make her very emaciated. Even without sun exposure, phantoms are pretty ragged looking, their wings are all ripped and their bones are sticking out their skin, so she's rotting a little bit, bless her. We currently have a cameo. Yes, we do, we have a little tiny cameo, don't we? Yeah? Something I should mention is the lack of wings. Since the Phantom origin can't fly, I decided not to give her wings, and instead gave her these tattered bat wing-like ears instead. I also ended up drawing her floating since I snatched away her legs. Hopefully that makes up for the lack of wings. As for the fit, I took inspiration from classic ye olde ghosts with flowing rags and chains, because the Phantom can enter a form where she's invisible and can move through walls, so she's got that Jacob Marley aesthetic going on. And she's all spine too, which is also a look. Problem is that drawing spines is pretty damn back-breaking. Like, even though I have a very cartoony art style, it's still a bit tedious. But it was absolutely worth it. I will say I was using a reference of like a diagram of a spine, but this is far from being anatomically accurate, which I'm fine with because I wasn't really going for that. At the end of the day, I want it to look cool and hopefully I managed that. The part I was really looking forward to with the Phantom is the colours. The mob itself has a pretty solid colour scheme. It's got your primary, your secondary, and your accent. No diss to Endermen, but with them, you're only working with 2 colours, so it's nice to have a colour palette already picked out for me. With the rags though, I ran into a similar issue that I had with the enderion, so I gave them a slight hue shift to make them more warmer than the skin tone. To make her a bit more spooky, I finished her off with some embellishments. So she's got some gradients going on and some veiny veins all over. Onto the elytrian. I didn't actually know this, but elytra are actually part of beetle wings. They're the hard bits that go over the wings themselves. So while this origin doesn't really have a linked mob, I'm going to assume that based on this, they're beetle people. More specifically with this guy, a rhino beetle. You find elytra wings in those floating end city ships, so I ended up running with this and giving him a vaguely naval, nautical kind of look. So he's got a sash with an epaulette. Sorry, that's a disgusting French word, you can't expect me to pronounce that. A cutlass sword thing, swanky boots. I also gave him end rods on his belt to match the enderion. One thing to know is I didn't want to put too much on his midsection since elytrians can't equip chest armor because they have wings. And on the subject of wings, I wanted to make him look really beetle-like and not solely rely on the wings to do that. So he's all segmented and he's pretty barrel-chested, but also has little twiggy arms and legs. I would have given him an extra set of arms to look more beetle-y, but in the description of the actual origin itself, it doesn't say a lot about them having extra limbs, so I decided to forgo that, because I want to keep it as accurate as I can. Like the merling, I also had some trouble drawing this dude's face. Thankfully, it wasn't as troublesome because it was mostly just his mouth that was the issue. I wanted to give him some subtle mandibles, but I was balancing that with not letting his face get too busy. I feel like the elytrian should be somewhat sleek looking because he's going to be gliding and diving. Bro's got to be aerodynamic. For the colours, I was originally going to make his arms a dark purple to mimic the legs on a beetle. And watching back now, I'm thinking, what could have been? The problem with that was they ended up blending too much with the wings, and obviously the colour of the wings are non-negotiable. You can see in the speed paint the moment I realised that and decided to start again. Heartbreaking because I really do dig the dark arms and the teal green clothing, but we ball. What I ended up doing instead was making his body a lighter, warmer purple so that it contrasts with the darker, cooler purple on the wings. I'm imagining his skin, or carapace? I'm imagining it's got a pearlescent sheen to it. Admittedly, he's a little monochromatic, but I forgive him because he has green and yellow accent colours on some of his accessories. He also has a little enderion jewel encrusted on his sword sheath. Get your rotten little head out of the gutter. I've also added some gradients on his body and wings. And finally I did the shading on the wings, and I really think it breathed some life into them because they were looking kind of drab, and that's him finished. So that's it for now at least. Let me know what you think and let me know if you're interested in a part 2. I mean, to be honest, I'm probably going to end up making one anyway regardless because this was pretty fun to do and I've always been wanting to do this for a while now. Also, I already said this on my Tumblr and Reddit, but I'm going to be starting testosterone this year. I will be doing update videos, but instead of the usual, this is my voice 1 week on T, I'm going to see if I can still do all my dumb impressions as my voice drops, or if I can do any new ones. Alright, cheers, bye.